It can be so intimidating to know that you have 10 to 15 minutes with a therapist for a consultation and no idea what you're supposed to say or ask. So to help you make the best of it, let's talk about it. Welcome to Therapy Explained. My name is Deniss. I'm the therapist of color for people of color and your very own mental health cheerleader. I post videos about all things mental health because I believe that mental health information should be free and accessible to everyone. If you agree and would like to help spread the word, make sure to subscribe and share this video. Every video also comes with its own cheat sheet that I make available to you on Instagram, so make sure to follow me there so that you can have access to yours. Today's video is a follow-up to our previous conversation about things to know before you find a therapist or why you're looking for a therapist. But now we're at the stage of a consultation. So what are you supposed to do, say, or ask during a consultation? Let's get to it. Here are a few questions that you should know and ask yourself before your consultation. The first one is, what is important to me in a therapist? By this, I mean, what are your values that you hope that your therapist aligns with? This could be perhaps their cultural background, their racial background, the language that they speak. Are they involved in things like speaking up for underrepresented communities? Is that important to you? Is it important to you that they are a certain age, that they share your faith? So all of these things are important to note. What is it that it is important for me to have in a therapist to feel comfortable with them? Then you can look at the ones that you've already scheduled a consultation with or that you're thinking about scheduling a consultation with and start to rule out the ones that don't line up with you. And if you're not quite sure, for example, you want a therapist who shares your faith, but you're not quite sure, it's nowhere on their website whether or not they do, you can still schedule a consultation and add this to your list of questions to ask during the 10 to 15 minutes that you might have with this therapist. The next question is, what is my idea of therapy? What am I going into it thinking? Is it going to be me on a couch just processing out loud? Is it me on a couch asking questions, getting answers to all of my problems, getting homework? Is it what is it? What is your idea of therapy? And this is important to have because you can ask the therapist during the consultation about it. Hey, this is my idea. Is this how you run your therapy? And we'll talk a little bit more about some questions to ask the therapist when you're in a consultation, but these are good questions to ask yourself. What is my expectation of therapy? What is it supposed to look like? And if the answer is, I have no idea, that's okay too. The next question is, what do I expect to get out of therapy? So it's similar to what do I see it looking like during my sessions, but in general, at the end of maybe 6 months or a month or however long, what do you expect to see in yourself? What do you expect to get out of it? Am I going to therapy because I want to learn how to manage my anxiety? Am I going to therapy because I'm expecting that my relationship with my parents will be fixed, or that I'll get better sleep, or I'll manage work better? So what is it that you are expecting that therapy will do for you? Write these answers down, by the way. And the next question is, what do I need to see or feel in myself to know that therapy is working? Again, it's similar to what do I expect therapy to do for me, but it helps you also learn how to identify any progress. So for example, if you're going to therapy because you want to learn how to manage your anxiety better or not feel anxious anymore, how do you know that? How do you know that you're not anxious anymore? How do you know that it's actually helping you get there? Would that mean that you are getting better sleep, that you're hanging out with people more, that you don't feel tired or exhausted? What does that actually look like? So these are good questions, again, to ask yourself before the consultation. And again, I encourage you to actually write these down. So let's jump to some things that you should ask your therapist or potential therapist before the consultation. I talked a little bit about one way in which you can start ruling out some potential therapists by whether or not they align to the values that are important to you to have in a therapist. But another way to start to rule out potential therapists is by location, if that is important to you, by price range, so that it fits your budget, by age, if that's important. So when you look at your therapist, start ruling out the things that are not so much aligning with your values as much as it is this going to be convenient for me? Are they available during the times that I'm available? Because it's great if you find a therapist that you click with and that you really want to work with, but if at the end of the day they don't have any slots available in the evenings like it works for you, or on the weekends when it works for you, then all of that work will be for nothing. So start asking them. Email a therapist. You absolutely can totally email a therapist beforehand. If that is on their contact, email them and ask them these questions before you meet for the consultation. Because if some of these things are deal breakers, it's important to get them out of the way beforehand. So ask them all these questions. Do you offer a sliding scale? Because again, if you click with a therapist and then you decide that you want to work with them, but their fee is way too high for you, again, it's going to kind of be very defeating for you and make it more difficult for you to continue to find a therapist or try to find a therapist. So some of these things like price, budget, location, that are going to be more on like the day-to-day administrative kind of side is also important for you to know before you even sit down for the consultation with them. Some things to ask your therapist while you are in the consultation are things like, how often are we going to meet? How do you take payments? What are some of the practice policies? A lot of practices will have a late notice or no-show policies where they will charge you a fee if you are completely late or very, very late, or just don't show up at all. So it is important that you know some of this, again, administrative stuff. If you're doing telehealth, ask them if the link doesn't work or the internet's not working, how are we going to do our session? Does that count as a no-show? Does that count as a late consultation? Are we going to do our session over the phone instead? And is that okay with you? So these are all administrative things to ask your therapist that often kind of go unasked during the consultation, but are important. More clinical stuff that is going to go to whether or not you're a good fit for this therapist or with this therapist are things like, tell me about your history, like your clinical history and your clinical training. What experience do you have working with people with my symptoms, right? Share a little bit with them about what you're experiencing. Therapists are usually looking for a lot of the basics. How's your sleep? How's your appetite? How are you doing at work or at school? How are your relationships? So if any of these are popping up as like, oh yeah, I have a lot of stress at work, or I have a lot of conflict in family, it's important for you to share this with the potential therapist if this is something that you're going to want to cover. A lot of therapists are competent in covering about, I want to say about 90% of things that are coming up for you, but not every therapist specializes in particular things. So it is important for you to share your experience with your mental health, what's coming up for you, and address the things that you asked yourself on that list of questions before your consultation. Whatever came up for you, you can say, this is how I picture therapy going for me, or this is what's important for me in a therapist. Do you share any of these things? You're interviewing them. You're trying to see if they fit you and if you click with them. So keep that in mind. You're getting to know them, you're interviewing them, and it is also absolutely okay for you to say, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to go ahead and think about this, sit with this. Is it okay if I contact you in a day or two? And that's totally more than okay. Most therapists are okay with that. And we're also open to you emailing us questions if you forget. So that's another thing. If you have all these things that you want to ask and say, and then you forget, it's okay. You can always email us and ask follow-up questions. So let's review before we go. Number one, you can sit with yourself before a consultation to ask yourself some questions about what's important to you to have in a therapist. Actually write these down. This criteria can be helpful to start to rule out therapists that are absolutely not a good fit. If things like budget, location, availability, race, religion, any other thing is important to you and you can already check off potential therapists, go ahead and do so. Some of these questions could be easily answered, so if a therapist has an email for contact information, go ahead and email them and ask them these questions so that you know ahead of time whether or not they're going to be a good fit. Once you're in the room with a therapist or a virtual room with a therapist, make sure to share the reflections that you've made during your first sit down with yourself. This is my idea of therapy, this is what I expect of therapy, this is why I'm looking for therapy. Share it with them because it's important for them to know whether or not you're a good fit. Remember that this is an interview. You're trying to figure out who they are and whether or not they're actually going to be able to help you and whether or not this is a good fit. Remember from our previous video that the most important thing is your relationship with that therapist, so this is super important. It's okay to ask them questions as well about their training, their history, and how they see themselves helping you, and to take your time afterwards to figure out if you want to go ahead and move on with treatment with them. If you found any of these tip tools or ideas useful, please give this video a thumbs up. Any show of love that you give this video, whether it's a like, a subscription, a comment, or a share, really helps spread the word about free mental health information and education. So it is also very much appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Your cheat sheet is already available to you on Instagram, so hop on over there to get access to it. And remember, I'm always cheering for you. Therapy Explained is now offering workshops. Every workshop will help you develop tangible coping tools during the workshop itself. It comes with a workbook that has the contents of the topic that is being covered, as well as some journal prompts to help you continue the work that we start together. And there is also a question and answer portion at the end of the live workshops. Alternatively, the workshops are also available to you online so that you can access them whenever is most convenient for you. Go ahead and check it out at therapyexplained.org/workshops.